When I first heard that Newcastle were going to be taken over by one of the richest people in the world, my initial thought as a West Ham fan was, why not us? Why not us? Why has he overlooked West Ham? Gone up to the northeast and chosen Newcastle. Not so much why has he chosen Newcastle, it's a big club. You can see why, the only club in the city, so on and so forth. You can see why. GOT's video last night alluded to it being a sleeping giant. Absolutely. But I still thought, why? Why has he overlooked West Ham? But once I got over my jealousy, I actually thought, do we want that type of owner at West Ham? Do we want this particular takeover? Now, don't get me wrong. I want new owners at West Ham. But it's got to be the right owners. And there is enough of a doubt in my mind about this to make me a little bit unsure. I'm aware I'm swimming against the tide. I'm aware it's all over Sky Sports News. It's all over everywhere. Everybody is under the impression that they're going to come in, they're going to spend big, they're going to make Newcastle the biggest club in the world, or whatever the case may be. I'm not so sure. Now, in terms of West Ham, I look at it anyway, and one of the things that I initially thought about was, are we priced too high? Is it the fact that the 300 million, the 350 million that Newcastle was, is that a deciding factor? Was the fact that we were valued at 500 million too much? But it can't be. It can't be. And I'll tell you why. Because the people looking to buy, apparently, Newcastle United are the Saudi investment funds, the public investment fund of Saudi Arabia, worth 360 billion. Now, if you look at the Man City takeover, if you look at Roman Abramovich, those are two takeovers with people that have invested a lot of money in a club. I don't like the word investment. Investment indicates you want a return. Those people are never getting a return. But when Sheikh Mansour took over Man City, he wasn't quibbling about 200 million. I think he spent 1.5 billion on that club. To get the right club doesn't matter. I mean, again, Roman Abramovich has spent an awful lot of money. My point is, I don't come in and penny pinch. Yet we found out with this Newcastle deal that they've driven the price down from 350 million to 300 million. Well, that's a strange thing to do when you're extremely wealthy. They don't do that. They just don't go in and haggle to that extent. If they do, they go in and haggle themselves, but they've got someone fronting the deal. Now, let me just tell you, let me explain a few things about this as well. This deal is being fronted by somebody called, what's her name? Amanda Staveley. Get this, Amanda Staveley, this is the third time she has tried to front a bid to buy that club. Now, there'll be many of you that may remember when we did our 24-hour stream, we had a guy called Kieran Maguire on. Gio asked him loads and loads of questions. Gio did all the questions. I asked him one question. Because at the time, it was rumoured that Newcastle were about to be taken over by a rich sheikh or a consortium fronted by Amanda Staveley's company, which is PCP Capital Partners. I asked Kieran Maguire, I said, this doesn't seem right. I said, normally people don't announce. When the mega rich owners take over a club, Sheikh Mansour, Roman Abramovich, they don't announce it. You just find out the next day. I often give the example of Mark Hughes, who was previously working under Thanks in Sinatra, was stood there looking gormless, didn't know what happened with his arm around Robinho, thinking, what's happened here? On transfer deadline day. That tends to be how they do things. Roman Abramovich was exactly the same. You don't tend to get a heads up on these things. So I asked Kieran Maguire, this doesn't seem right. Go back and watch the interview because he posted it up individually. Kieran Maguire agreed. He said, yeah, no, I don't think this is the way things are done. It turns out that sheikh was skint. Now, don't get me wrong, not a skint. I'd like to be as skint as that sheikh, but he didn't have the money to buy a football club. We've heard this before. We've seen it happen at Portsmouth. That was her second failed bid. Now, bearing in mind Amanda Staveley wants to get her hands on Newcastle United, I'm wondering, why did you not know? Why did you not know that the person you were fronted didn't have the cash to do it? The deal didn't go through. It actually looks, as bizarrely as it sounds, as if this fella that wanted to take over was just trying to get a few extra Twitter followers and things like that. Apparently he is the third cousin twice removed from the guy that holds the keys to power in Saudi Arabia. As I say, not a skint. He's not living in a high-rise block in Maida Vale, but he hasn't got the money to buy a football club. Now, I'm wondering what is going on here. First of all, let me tell you who you're dealing with in terms of who wants to buy the club. You are dealing with Mohammed bin Salman. It's not very often that somebody goes to buy a football club and I know who they are. But this guy, I knew exactly who he was. Let me tell you why I knew who he was. Probably 2 or 3 years ago, I'll find out and I'll put the details up. I watched a documentary series on the BBC called The House of Saud. It was about the Saudi family, about the Saudi royal family, about how they come to power, who was who does what. And bin Salman featured very, very prominently in that. And after watching it, it was, I'll tell you what, if this was on Netflix, right? If this show was on Netflix, everyone would be watching. It'd be like the Tiger King of its, of the Middle East, if you like, but not quite as freak showish, granted. But it's a tale of intrigue. It's a tale of murder. It's a tale of backstabbing. It's a tale of taking money from one another. It's a shady old program, is what I'm saying. So I'd seen bin Salman on that quite a few times, and because more or less the program was centered around him. As I say, enough for the BBC to make a 3-part documentary. 3 hours this documentary was, watched it in 3 parts. Then, of course, it came to light that there was a journalist murdered in Saudi Arabia. And how can I say, I've got to be careful, I say this, haven't I? It was, put it this way, bin Salman was forced to come out and say, look, this had nothing to do with me. Anyway, the point of the matter is, I knew who he was because I'd seen him involved in 2 controversial news stories and a documentary. So, we know who this guy is. This is not somebody who flies under the radar. My point is at West Ham, again, it's not something I would openly encourage anyway. I'd much rather have Sheikh Mansour. I'd much rather have Roman Abramovich. This guy is oil rich. They're still pulling barrels of oil out of the ground like there's no tomorrow. There's just no one to buy it. That's why the oil price is low at the moment. But they're still producing it. And the Saudi investment fund is put into place. So as when the oil runs out, anybody that's in the oil business still has a revenue, basically. It's for projected revenues in 50 years' time, that sort of thing. Now here's the issue where I'm wondering how much of this is true. Go back to Amanda Staveley. Amanda Staveley has put up basically a £10 million deposit to make this deal go through. But she couldn't afford the 10 million. Mike Ashley has lent her, the £10 million to start the process of buying Newcastle United. Well, that is very, very odd. Number one, why is Staveley involved anyway? As a broker? The Saudi investment fund don't need a broker. They've already got their own brokers. As I say, they're worth, what is it, about 320 billion pounds. They are making investments all over the globe. They have people to go in to make these deals. So why is Amanda Staveley fronting it? And if what she really needs is 10 million to get the ball rolling, I would imagine this guy spends that in a week on as pocket change for him. Why hasn't Sheikh bin Hamad given her the money? Why hasn't he given her the 10 million? Why hasn't the Saudi investment fund given her 10 million? Why has Mike Ashley lent her the 10 million to go and buy his club? Again, it makes me wonder what is going on. Look, is Mohammed bin Salman a very, very rich bloke? Yes, undoubtedly. One of the richest in the world. Absolutely. But I just wonder if what they're going to do is make Newcastle the biggest club in the world. It doesn't look particularly promising at the start. Number one, he's not involved in negotiations. Someone else is doing it for him. Now, I understand you've got probably travel issues and whatnot at the moment, but still, why choose this particular person who's already had 2 failed attempts? Why have they not been given the money? I mean, let's be fair. If you can't afford 10 million at the start, what are the chances of you handing money over to buy Kylian Mbappe for 200 million? I do wonder. And then I also wonder about how this plays out in terms of them wanting to get European football. Because at the moment, under the current rules, they can't. They can't get European football. Because Gio did a great video yesterday about they might want to buy Declan Rice, they might want to buy Diop, they could buy McGinn, Jack Grealish, they could buy Wilfred Zaha, they could start building up this team of the best players in the Premier League who went to the top 6. If they did that, they would fall foul of financial fair play regulations. The moment they qualified for Europe, they'd be banned from Europe for exactly the same reasons that Man City got into trouble. Now, just forget for a moment what I said yesterday, which is I don't think there's any European football or international football for a very, very long time. Anyway, forget the fact that this is just a weird time to buy a football club anyway. I'm not sure why you would buy a football club now. I think it could be a long, long time before we see any football. I think we've said that on a number of occasions. So I'm not sure why you would buy one now. But I also think, if we just go along, if you just stay with me on this story about taking a club up and getting them into Europe, because what they want, when they buy a club like this, you want the kudos. You want to be able to say, this is my club. The Qataris have done it with Paris Saint-Germain. That's why Paris Saint-Germain not winning the Champions League yet is not great for them. They bought Paris Saint-Germain as a flagship because Qatar is running a World Cup. They want to say, look, this is our football club. This is where I held in the World Cup. We could do football. We could do big. Look at us. We're Qatar. We're one of the best nations in the world. That's really what it's all about. That's what Abu Dhabi's done. Roman Abramovich, slightly different, even though it's all money. It's been more of a play thing for him. But this is a statement of intent. If Saudi Arabia basically takes a football team, they're not just playing in the Premier League. They're doing it to play against Qatar, and they're doing it to play against Abu Dhabi. That's what's going on here. If you're doing that, you want to be the biggest and you want to be the best. If after spending this money, if what you're doing is haggling down the price from 350 million to 300 million, if what you're doing is asking for Mike Ashley to lend the first 10 million, then all of a sudden what you're going to do is start throwing money around and you're going to spend 300 million on your team to take you up in the Champions League, but you can't get into the Champions League places. If you were that rich, if you are worth 320 billion, wouldn't it just be better to go and buy Manchester United and have it all done?